man. Thanks for joining me on this Monday. It is very much appreciated. Everything Pat's a New England Patriots podcast with you to talk about this football team and the very latest from the practice field and heading towards the middle of August. I'll tell you what, Mike Vrabel is keeping the heat on Drake Maye. What am I talking about? I'm talking about Mike Vrabel publicly going out there and letting everybody know that he is going to hold Maye accountable. Karen Garigian wrote this at Mass Live today. Vrabel didn't pull any punches. His takedown of Maye following the win over Washington was direct to the point and fueled by displeasure. The Patriots coach unloaded the full barrel and wake of Maye, coughing up the ball on a strip sack. It was a play that could have been avoided. Now, here's what Vrabel said in the postgame, quote, "That's a bad decision. I think we're going to need better from him. I think he knows that. That's obvious. It wasn't there. We just have to find a way to get rid of the football or take a sack and punt and play defense," unquote. And then Vrabel went on WEEI, and here's what he had to say. Quote, "The expectation is that Drake Maye's leading this football team. That's what the job of the head coach and the quarterback is. That's pretty much how this thing goes. And that he can't take days off. I mean, sometimes the performance isn't going to be extraordinary, but the leadership and the demeanor has to be. And I think he's learning that." It's clear. It's clear that Mike Vrabel, and we probably could have guessed this going back months ago when he was hired by the Patriots. Vrabel is not going to handle Maye with kid gloves. He's not going to walk around the starting quarterback like he's walking on eggshells. He's not going to go out of his way to treat him special or excuse every little thing that Maye does wrong. That's not what Vrabel's going to do. That's not how he's going to handle this quarterback. He's going to handle this quarterback pretty tough. And he's going to let the quarterback and everybody else knows when the QB messes up. This is not going to be the kid glove approach. And I do think at times last year, there was the kid glove approach with Maye. Now, whether or not that hurt him or stunted his growth, we don't know. Might have had zero impact. But this coaching staff is going to be much different when it comes to Maye. The new regime is truly going to be baptism by fire. And Maye has to feel that. He has to feel that immediately. He has to understand that his head coach is going to keep him accountable and make sure that these mistakes, these turnovers, everybody's going to know about them. And there's going to be no cover. There's going to be no, well, this happened and that happened. And let's try to find convenient excuses to make the QB feel better about himself. That's not what Vrabel's going to do. And it's obvious. And Vrabel has mentioned this from time to time in different interviews. But Vrabel holds his leadership to the highest standard. He holds his best players to the highest of standards. He wants the best players on this team to set the example for everybody else. And so he looks at Maye and he says, "You're going to be our franchise quarterback. You have to set the highest standard." And for Vrabel, he's going to go after the best players the hardest. He's not going to give them much leeway. He's not going to give them a ton of wiggle room. It's reminiscent of Bill Belichick. And this is obviously part of what Vrabel took from Belichick and utilizes it as part of his coaching approach. As we've heard and we've read a billion stories about how Belichick would make life miserable for Brady and how he always, and in front of the team, would always make an example out of Brady. He wanted to make sure that everybody in that room understood that Tom Brady was the same as everybody else when it came to making some mistakes. And he wanted to make sure that the head coach was going to keep the face of the franchise accountable in front of everybody else. And Vrabel is going after it the same way with Maye from day one. Hold that high standard. If you're going to be our franchise quarterback, if you want to be the face of this organization for the next 10, 12, 14 years, you have to understand that when you make mistakes, when you screw up, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to go out there and let everybody know that you screwed up and that we're not going to accept that. Because if you make an example out of the starting quarterback, then everybody else on the team could be made an example of. And Vrabel understands that. If you hold your best players to the highest standards, then everybody else on the team should theoretically follow those leaders, your best players. That's how it works. You start at the top, the rest fall in order. And that's what Vrabel wants to see. Nobody is safe. If Drake Maye isn't safe, nobody is safe from hearing from the head coach via the media that they weren't good enough, that they need to step up. And it's a huge responsibility for Maye. It really is. You know, when you look at this team, there's a lot that makes you feel like they could be pretty good. And even if you're not as rosy as some of the others about 2025, I think that the vast majority of fans feel like this team is headed in the right direction. I feel like the vast majority of fans feel like this team can be competitive. And I think most fans feel like this team could actually be a part of the conversation when we get to late November, early December. But that's not going to happen if Maye fumbles and stumbles and bumbles his way through this season. It's just not going to. So he has a huge responsibility. If Drake Maye's season is full of bad decisions and bad play, then the season is going to spiral downward from there. You're not going to be able to survive a quarterback that turns the football over once or twice or 3 times a week. It's just not going to be that way. You're just not going to be able to survive that. And Vrabel knows it, and Maye knows it. So Drake Maye, I won't say has this entire season on his shoulders, but he has to do his part. And his part is a gigantic part because of the position that he plays, his responsibility to the football team. So that responsibility, Vrabel is trying to make sure his quarterback truly appreciates. You can talk about it, but you've got to be about it. You can say you understand, but you might not understand completely. And every time Vrabel goes out there and he takes a shot at a Drake Maye decision, a bad play, every time he goes, quote unquote, after the quarterback, then Maye will understand. He will appreciate the impact that he has on the rest of the guys in that locker room. So I love the fact that Vrabel is not going to hold back. He's not going to be delicate with Maye. He's going to make sure that he handles him like he handles every other top player on this team. There's going to be no bubble wrapping of Drake Maye in 2025. You've got to be better. And if you turn the ball over, you make some of the same mistakes we saw in your rookie season, you're going to hear about it. And you're not only going to hear about it in meetings, you're not just going to hear about it watching film. You're going to hear about it publicly because I'm going to go out there and I'm going to let the world know that that can't happen and that was on you. And I think this is needed for year 2 of Drake Maye. This approach by Vrabel is necessary because you just cannot deal with Maye having any type of regression this season. You just can't have it. One of the worst things that could happen this year is if Maye regresses, if Maye looks similar to what he looked like last year, if he's making the same kinds of decisions in the pocket, if he's trying to run away from everybody instead of trying to remain a passer, all the things that Vrabel and Josh McDaniels and other people on the staff have discussed, all of that means something. If Maye regresses, it's a borderline disaster. As a matter of fact, I would say if Maye is the same guy as we saw in his rookie season, you could be saying it's a borderline disaster. The very idea, the very essence of Maye was that you were going to draft him in the top 3, not because of what he was, but what he was going to be. And if he goes out there and he shows any kind of regression, or you're saying to yourself middle way through this season, man, it feels like Maye has like plateaued. That would be bad. That would be very bad. And I've been consistent from day one. You have to see the steady progression from Maye. You have to see enough throughout this season that you believe ultimately in 2026, he's going to make a gigantic leap. And so far, overall, Maye has had a good camp, if not very good camp. Now we'll get to what happened today. On the Locked On Patriots podcast, today's episode, I talked about Sunday's practice and how Maye got off to a slow start this week. So it wasn't the best on Friday night. It wasn't great yesterday. It wasn't great today. We'll get to more details in a little bit. He's had some rough patches, but you can expect and even accept those rough patches if he learns from those mistakes. And Josh McDaniels said earlier today that he does feel like Maye learns from his mistakes. He doesn't make the same mistake 2 times or 3 times in a practice. They go over something, he figures it out, and he corrects it, improves, and you feel better about the QB. So he has shown some ability to respond. But you've got to see that progression from the first day of OTAs through these Vikings joint practices this week, heading into the first week of the season against the Raiders. You've got to feel like your quarterback is taking steps forward, that he's improving. Can't deal with any regression. Can't even deal with a plateau. All right, before I continue, don't forget to help us out. You can do it in a few simple ways. Doesn't cost you any money. Doesn't take a lot of time. Hit that thumbs up as you watch us, whether you're watching live or on demand. Don't forget to give us that thumbs up on YouTube. Don't forget to throw a comment in. How do you feel about Mike Vrabel holding Maye accountable, going public with, some of these jabs, some of these criticisms? I'm all for it. I'm fine with it. But how do you feel about it? Throw a comment in. That helps us with the algorithm. And don't forget to subscribe. Great news today. We hit 7,000 subscribers. That was our goal. So we are at the 7,000 subscriber mark, and it's all because of you. Appreciate every single one of you and the support that you give this show. Spotify, Apple Pods, rate, review, follow, all the good stuff. Again, thanks to all of you. So let's get to practice today. It was an okay practice for Maye until the end. Patriots got to situational football, and when they got to switch situational football, things kind of went haywire. Andrew Callahan posted, sloppy offense again in the final 11 on 11s versus the top defense. Maye was 5 of 10, had a delay of game penalty, and 2 sacks. Phil Perry posted, the competitive portion of practice came at the end. Top defense had its way with the top offense. Now, Callahan had Maye 5 for 10. Perry had Maye 4 for 10 with 3 sacks. Callahan had 2 sacks. So my guess is that one of the sacks that Perry had, Callahan did not credit the defense with the sack. Would make the most sense. Now, according to Phil Perry, Christian Ellis, Robert Spillane, and Kaylavon Chason, who's had a terrific camp, all those three guys had sacks. And here was more from Perry saying 2 of the sacks appeared to come on stunts on the left side of the offensive line. Spillane seemed to loop around Will Campbell on the left edge for 1. Chason crashed inside to get by Jared Wilson on another. So let's start here. The delay of game that happened during the final 11 on 11 period. That's the type of thing that we haven't seen happen. That's the type of stuff that on Friday night wasn't there. The delay of game, the operational stuff. The Patriots were pretty smooth from an operations standpoint on Friday night. You didn't have the delay of games. You didn't have any kind of offensive hysteria with Maye looking around, the offensive line looking around, skill position players looking confused. You didn't see much of that on Friday night. But on the 11 on 11s today, in that final period, when they were working on some situational football, you saw a delay of game. And I saw multiple people post that Vrabel seemed irritated, frustrated, that the offense didn't necessarily do a good job of handling the clock during this situational practice. And it stands to reason. These are the things, these are the details that when we discuss Vrabel and how he handles his team, those are the types of details that will irritate and infuriate him. Because you have control over it. Get the play into the huddle. Let the guys know what you're running. Get to the line of scrimmage. Get them lined up correctly and snap the football. And I praised on the podcast for Locked On that I did on Saturday following the preseason game, I praised the operation, and I praised the idea that there weren't those types of mistakes. Well, today they saw it, a delay of game to go along with 2 or 3 sacks, depending on who you're listening to, Callahan or Perry. It was either 2 or 3. So we did see some of that stuff that we hadn't seen against Washington last week. We saw it today in practice. I also think it's meaningful that the coaching staff is no doubt challenging the young offensive line. I go back to Phil Perry's post. 2 of the sacks, again, Perry had 3 sacks on that final 11-on-11 period. 2 of those 3 sacks appeared to come on stunts on the left side of the O-line. And we saw an issue on Friday night during the fumble where there was miscommunication between Campbell and Wilson. Maye also did not do a great job of diagnosing what was in front of him, and it ended up in the fumble. Now, some will tell you it wasn't necessarily a stunt. Campbell might have played it into a stunt, but it's clear. It's clear that this offensive coaching staff is trying to get the young offensive linemen on the left side on the same page and to make sure that when teams are playing games up front, Campbell and Wilson understand what's happening, communicate with each other, and get it blocked. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we're seeing the defense throw some of these stunts. We see these challenges being thrown at the Patriots' young offensive linemen a couple of days before a joint practice against the Vikings. We'll talk more about this on all the podcasts that I do. But, if you look at the Vikings as we get ready for the joint practices, very tough defense to deal with. They got a really talented defensive line, but of course you also have Brian Flores. And Brian Flores loves, as they used to call it in the Rex Ryan days, spinning the dial. Flores loves playing games up front. He loves trying to confuse the offensive line. He loves trying to confuse the quarterback. And he will throw multiple things. He'll throw the kitchen sink at an offense to mess them up. So when you watch on Friday night and you see some of that miscommunication, that flub from Wilson, Campbell, and Maye, all 3 guys had a role in that fumble. When you see that type of play and you break it down, if you're Mike Vrabel, if you're the coaching staff, you're saying to yourself, well, we know next week when we go against Minnesota, Minnesota's going to be messing around with us. Minnesota's going to be, throwing different looks at us. And for a fact that Flores is watching that film, and for a fact that Flores is walking into this joint practice, these joint practices, with the full understanding that the Patriots have not one but 2 rookies on the left side, blind side for Maye. So I think it would be a shock. It would be shocking if Flores doesn't put Campbell and Wilson to the test over and over and over and over again. And the Patriots coaching staff is getting Wilson and Campbell prepared for that by throwing multiple stunts at them today during that final 11-on-11 period. You better be ready, because this is what you're going to see against Minnesota. So smart, trying to get ahead of it. We'll see if the defensive line stunts, those challenging plays for Wilson and Campbell, we'll see if the stunts that Terrell Williams and company called for today, we'll see if that helps the Patriots in the O-line later in the week against the Vikings. It might not. It might. We'll see if it does. This week against Minnesota, I think we'll see, how much of the offensive struggles are on the offense at times, how much of the offensive struggles are on the Patriots defense. How close does the Vikings defense look like the Patriots defense going against this offense? That might give you a decent read as to where this defense is right now. But it's going to be an interesting matchup. It's going to be compelling to watch because Minnesota loaded up on that defensive line, on the interior of that defensive line during this offseason. We should have a lot more information on the offensive line after Saturday's preseason game, and we should have a much better gauge as to how this offensive line is performing, because I do think, due to talent and the coaching, Minnesota is going to be a rather big challenge for Josh McDaniels and his O-line. So this is information gathering time. We should have a lot more information after this week about where this team is. I said this on the Locked On Patriots podcast that I released last evening. You know, this Minnesota Vikings week, and I've said this now for the last few months, and all of you know it. This week against the Vikings is the biggest week of camp. I've said it from the very beginning. This isn't like a hot take. It's not late breaking news. It's this week from when you started OTAs. This was the week that you were looking at. We'll see if they respond. We'll see if Drake Maye gets over the last 2 days of practice where he hasn't been very good. We'll see if the offensive line figure some things out after a tough 11-on-11 today. And if they don't, can they fix it? We'll see. All right, some other notes aside from Vrabel and May and stuff like that. Some other notes. Today's practice, the approach was different. And several people on the ground mentioned this on Twitter/X. A lot of starters against the scout team today. So what you saw was, the scout team running Minnesota Vikings plays. They were going off of cards today, and they haven't done that really throughout this camp. So today, it was really handled as a regular season practice. And it makes sense. So you go through today, you're working off cards, you're going against scout team, starters versus scout team. You have a travel day tomorrow. Then you have the joint practices against Minnesota, and then you have the preseason game on Saturday. So Vrabel is trying to get the team conditioned to a regular season week on the road. So you have the practice today, much like a final walkthrough, before you get on the road and get ready to play against whoever. And that's how the practice was run today. The practice was run like a regular season practice. Starters versus scout team, and that's why the final 11-on-11 was the most interesting and the most competitive, because that's when you had starters versus starters, and that's when the offense had some issues. So a little bit of a change up today when it comes to the practice. Mr. Snoopy, Membu was A+. He can play left tackle. Should have taken him. Membu is playing right tackle right now for the Jets. We do not know if he would be capable of playing left tackle in the NFL. That's nothing but conjecture. That's a guess. We don't know if Membu could have played left tackle. He could have been moved to the left side and been an absolute disaster. All of it is a guess. So I wouldn't quite say that. And I also would say Will Campbell has not, been a disaster. Will Campbell has not been bad during camp. Now, he might not be showing greatness during camp, but he has not been a disaster. He's not been a sieve over and over and over again. So I think it's a little early for me, a little early to be saying, man, they messed up. They should have taken Membu. And if Membu never plays left tackle in the NFL, not even a conversation. Now, the guy that you're looking at, Mr. Snoopy, if you want to question, the stuff that's coming out early, and again, for me, it's way too early, but Josh Simmons out there in Kansas City, he's playing left tackle. And he right now is their starting left tackle. So if you want to question the Will Campbell pick, the guy you should really be bringing up is Simmons. But it's still way too early for me. Other notes from the practice today. Bad kicking day. Which is different because so far the kicking competition has been super hot. And I tweeted out at Nick C Radio, if you want to follow me, on Friday night, the Patriots could have two kickers. Well, both kickers today stunk out loud. Andy Borregales was 2 for 5. Parker Romo was 1 for 4. So a bad day for the kickers. Hopefully it's just one day, because the vast majority of this camp, they've both been good and they've both been accurate. So hopefully today was just a funky day and the kicking game was off because both guys weren't good. Javon Baker keeps showing up. He had a great catch during the practice today on a deep ball from Joshua Dobbs. And the one thing I've talked about with Baker is his lack of consistency. Well, the past couple of weeks, that has not been the case. The last couple of weeks, Javon Baker has been consistently making plays. It's almost every single practice that you hear that Baker has come down with a great catch, that he mossed somebody in the end zone, or he made a terrific catch going up and, stealing it from a defensive back. Baker's really making a push for this roster. And right now, I think it's tough to leave him off the roster, frankly, not just because of how he's playing, but because of what else is happening with the position with Kendrick Bourne and, his injury situation. Jalen Polk goes down with an injury on Friday night. So Baker, the last couple of weeks, he's been making plays, and he's been making plays consistently. Can he keep it up? It's a question. Big week for him. Can he keep it up against Minnesota? Can he make some plays? Can he make plays during the joint practices? Can he make a play or two on Saturday during the preseason game? But the last couple of weeks, I think you should feel pretty good about what Baker has done, given the circumstances. So if he continues to do this, you feel good about it. And you say, all right, well, maybe Baker has figured some things out. He spoke to the media yesterday, and he mentioned how he really appreciates Mike Vrabel and how he handles things and how he's blunt. And he's, there's really no, as we talked about with May earlier, there's not much sugarcoating. Baker says he likes that. Will it make a difference? I don't know. But Baker has absolutely had a better camp this year than he had last year. No doubt about that. So some positive news on Javon Baker. He continues to make plays. All right, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll have more thoughts on today's practice on the Locked On Patriots episode coming out later tonight. So you want to check that out. But don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, don't forget to subscribe as we hit 7,000 subscribers. I appreciate every single one of you. Have a great rest of your Monday. See you.